Very well done, Mark. I'm not sure if Nicholas gave us the briefing at the start. Look, if your phone does make a noise while you're in here, it's okay to answer it. The penalty will be you need to buy 50,000 units in whoever's speaking at the time, all right? So let's just get that one straight. Okay, second last in the order of the morning's business today, so Greenvale Mining. This is a story that I must admit I'm not tremendously familiar with, but it's been on the list to have a very close look at because they've embarked on an exciting growth strategy which was devised by the same team, Neil Biddle and Tony Leibowitz, who are behind Pilbara Minerals. And I know that this crowd will know those names in that company incredibly well. They're developing the Alpha Torbenite project in Queensland as a potential key domestic source of bitumen supply, and recently unveiled an exciting geothermal strategy, which is something we haven't heard about for quite some time, but in the current ESG-driven market, I'm sure that's something which is going to get some legs. So I apologise, Matt, I don't have any background on you or silly jokes to make, but please will you come up and tell us all about Greenvale Mining. Matt Healy.
Thanks, Hedley, for that introduction. Well, it's a transformational time for Greenvale. Last week, we announced the acquisition of Within Energy, a Queensland-based geothermal exploration company, and the disposition of our Georgina Basin IOCG project. Now, these actions mark the transition to a focus on carbon offset bitumen and geothermal renewable energy, and that's what I'm here to talk about today. So just a bit about Greenvale. Just under 400 million shares on issue, $5.1 million in the bank. The top 20 shareholders have 48% of shares, and the top 3 shareholders as directors held 24% of the company. Greenvale's board has a proven track record in discovery and development of mineral deposits, and our Chairman Tony Leibowitz and our MD Neil Biddle were founding directors of Pilbara Minerals and took that company from a $2.5 million market cap explorer right through to what is today Australia's first lithium producer. So the vision for Alpha is to be Australia's sole producer of bitumen products that are 100% carbon offset. Alpha is located about 500 kilometres west of Rockhampton and about 50 k's south of the township of Alpha. Discovered just over 80 years ago, and it's had a bit of a history of exploration, drilling and test work. Now, what is Torbenite? Well, Torbenite is an organic-rich sedimentary rock, and at Alpha it's located within a seam of kennel coal, which is also an organic-rich sedimentary rock. And you can see the two images there, Torbenite on the left and kennel coal on the right. And the special thing about Torbenite is it's got a very high yield. So you heat up Torbenite and it produces up to 700 litres per tonne, or just under 700 litres per tonne of oil. Now, the main product to come out of Alpha is expected to be bitumen, and that's what we're working towards. With our latest, reached a milestone of releasing our mineral resource estimate, the first one for the deposit, in the first quarter of this year. So our JORC mineral resource, it's an inferred resource, 18.6 million tonnes of combined Torbenite and kennel coal for 21.29 million barrels of synthetic oil equivalent. Now, there's room for resource extension at Alpha. As indicated by the arrows, the two arrows pointing down to the southwest, that's the down dip extension potential of the deposit, and we know the seam continues down that way from historical drilling. We just need diamond drilling to find out how much Torbenite and kennel coal is there. And up to the north, it's open to the north onto the adjacent EPM, which is also held by Greenvale. Now, we're doing a fair bit of project development work at the moment. We've just commenced PAR reactor test work. It's a different style of test work to the retorting that we've been doing so far, and the objective with the PAR reactor is to maximise the amount of bitumen products that come out of the Torbenite and kennel coal. Outside of the metallurgical test work, which we've just finished the first round of, by the way, and those samples are just about to head off to the lab for analysis. We've commenced our environmental baseline surveys. Now, these are prerequisites for environmental approvals, both state and federal, with our terrestrial ecological surveys complete and aquatic ecological surveys are underway. Now, as I said, bitumen is the main product expected to come out of Alpha. Australia imports 100% of its bitumen. So 40% of it comes from Southeast Asia, the other 40% from China, and the remaining 20 from other various parts of the world. We use about 1 million tonne per annum here in Australia, and as you can see from the chart, that's forecast to robustly increase over the 2020 to 2025 period. And actually, since this chart was produced, we've had some further demand side pressures come into play. We have the recently announced federal funding for rural roads. That was late last year. COVID stimulus measures for infrastructure projects are actually still flowing through, and so those are coming through right now. And also more locally here in Queensland, the successful 2032 bid for the Olympics has resulted in infrastructure works being brought forward here as well. Outside of the domestic market, there's potential export opportunities for the Pacific Islands and New Zealand. New Zealand's last refinery, Marsden Point, only closed in March this year, so New Zealand is importing 100% of its bitumen as well. Now, to commercialise this project, we're looking to entirely carbon offset all the bitumen products that come out. That would align the project with Queensland's renewable energy targets and the federal government's commitments to net zero by 2050. And how do we do that? Well, to offset carbon, you need to have carbon credits. And part of this transition for Greenvale is we're entering into the geothermal space. Queensland has excellent potential, and we're looking to take advantage of that. So what is geothermal energy? Well, simply put, it's heat from the ground. But once you've got something that's hot, then you need a liquid to carry it, and then you need permeability to bring it up to the surface. You can see from the map there, with all those green dots on it, those are the locations of geothermal power stations. It is a well-established technology, whether it's binary or direct technology around the world. And for high-temperature systems, you can flash to steam directly to run a turbine. But if you've got a moderate to a low temperature system, then binary cycle systems are used to exploit those resources. And there's some pretty big numbers out there when it comes to geothermal energy produced around the world. The US produced over 18,000 gigawatt hours of geothermal power in 2020, and it can make up a substantial amount of a nation's power needs, with New Zealand producing 18% of its needs from geothermal. Now, importantly, from the carbon offsetting point of view with Alpha, geothermal is an ultra-low or zero-emission power source, and that's important from the carbon credit side of things. So, there's an opportunity in Queensland, the binary cycle plant opportunity. Most geothermal projects in Australia historically have targeted deep, hot granites. And when I say deep, I mean over 4 kilometres typically. And that means that the exploration is expensive and the development of these resources is expensive. And in fact, if you're fracturing granite once you've drilled down to 4 kilometres, that carries a high degree of technical risk. But if you're looking to produce power with a binary plant, you're looking at shallow, moderate or low to moderate temperature geothermal resources, optimally around 100 to 120 degrees Celsius. In terms of revenue streams outside of wholesale power, there's additional revenue streams potentially out of carbon credits and renewable energy certificates. And in Queensland, we've got an excellent opportunity. There's plenty of hot rocks. That's a Geoscience Australia image at the top, and you can see the nice big hot patch of red over a fair chunk of Queensland and some additional areas closer to the coast which are warm. Now, geothermal power on a 24-hour dispatchable levelised cost of electricity basis is actually competitive with solar and wind, and the reason for that is once you take storage into account, things get very expensive very quickly. So we acquired Within Energy. We announced the acquisition of Within Energy last week. Within Energy have some prime locations located on the east coast of Australia, in Queensland, and including one particular permit adjacent to Gladstone. That's the location of Fortescue Future Industries renewable energy hub, and where they're intending to build the world's largest hydrolyser to produce hydrogen that will require a lot of power. Within have a substantial amount of in-house expertise when it comes to geothermal energy, with experience in the oil, gas and energy sectors. And once they're on board, they'll be driving the geothermal strategy for Greenvale moving forward. Which brings me to Georgina. The Georgina Basin project is located between the copper-gold provinces of Tennant Creek and Mount Isa. And the area has been subject to a lot of work by Geoscience Australia and the Northern Territory Geological Survey over the last 5 years. And the culmination of that work is that undercover, these rocks are very prospective for iron oxide copper-gold deposits. Greenvale has a substantial tenement presence in the region with over 4,500 square kilometres of tenements, with 8 granted and 5 remaining under application. Greenvale's invested significantly in the project to date with geophysical surveys, gravity, magnetics, geophysical modelling and exploration drilling. So, Georgina's got IOCG potential. What is that? Well, iron oxide copper gold deposits are typically large and they're economically very attractive. They account for the lion's share of domestic copper production. As you can see in the chart there, 35% of paid metal total in 2021. Now in South Australia, there's large to giant deposits. You'd be familiar with Prominent Hill, Carrapateena, and of course Olympic Dam. Northwest Queensland has world-class deposits such as Ernest Henry. And closer to home here at Tennant Creek, we have smaller high-grade variants of the IOCG class, and one example is Juno. Juno produced 470,000 tonnes over its life, which isn't much, but the feed grade for the mill was 60 grams per tonne, which is very high grade. So that's over $2 billion worth of gold in less than 500,000 tonnes of ore. One of the key characteristics is these deposits are high in iron oxide minerals, and that makes them dense and also makes them typically magnetic, and so you use gravity and magnetic surveys to find them. And that's just what we're doing. We've recommenced drilling just a few days ago at our central tenements, and that image in the top there is the first hole that we're drilling. That yellow shape is a 3D model of a gravity density high, and the green is a 3D model of a magnetic high, and so that's what we're targeting with the first hole. We have 2 holes planned initially for 1,100 metres, and there's a third hole that'll be co-funded as part of the NT Geological Survey co-funding grants. So, with the transition to a focus on renewable geothermal energy and carbon offset bitumen, it made sense to look at disposition of the Georgina project. We are selling 80% of the project to Astrid Resources for 1.15 billion shares, and this means that our shareholders retain a 20% direct project interest and a 19.7% stake in Astro. So exposure to future upside potential in terms of our exploration of the project. So in summary, it's our vision that Alpha becomes Australia's sole domestic source of carbon offset bitumen products. To do that, we're looking to offset our carbon through the use of generating moderate temperature geothermal power in Queensland. Queensland is a highly prospective area for this, with shallow, moderate temperature potential across large areas of the state. We've acquired Within Energy to kick off this strategy. Within have internal expertise and great tenement holdings. And as part of this, we're looking to dispose of Georgina Basin. I might just add as well that both of these transactions are conditional. They're expected to be wound up in around about 2 months. So, look, 15 minutes isn't much time to talk about 3 projects. Look, myself and our Executive Director, Mark Turner, who's looking after the Alpha project, are both here at the booth. Please come and visit us and we can have a bit of a more in-depth conversation about these projects. Thank you.